What else could we fucking watch? Let's see. Oh, this one. I actually wanted to watch this, and it's only 10 minutes long. Ooh, Pog.
In the United States, at least 10% of
How unprofitable companies stay in business, the rise of zombie firms.
publicly listed companies are taking on debts that they probably can't repay.
Pog!
Economists call these unviable companies zombie firms.
They
Love that.
crowd out capital that would otherwise be available to healthy firms.
Zombie firms are a growing problem around the world.
The share of zombie firms has been increasing over time. This has detrimental
You
effects.
say Atrioc LLC? You think Atrioc LLC is a zombie firm? I have zero overhead, zero debt. No, it's not a zombie firm. I'm not cooking the books, bro.
To the healthy firms that compete in the same sector.
Banks and governments keep zombie firms alive when they bail out unviable businesses.
I actually don't want the government to prop up zombie companies anymore. If a company has to
Tell him,
die
Kevin.
because the world has changed permanently, let it die.
The Fed's swift interest rate hikes are making long-suspected zombie firms go bankrupt.
The stance of policy is restrictive, meaning that tight policy is putting downward pressure on economic activity and inflation.
As these rates rise, it's becoming more expensive to do a lot of
I am in favor of Jerome Powell's recent raising of interest rates. I'm impressed that he got it done, and I think it's overall long-term healthier that we get it there. But I found out recently that he's worth $100 million. And it's like he's just in the wrong fucking class of wealth to know how this is going to impact regular people. That's just too much money for the fucking head of the Federal Reserve to make.
And inflation.
As these rates rise, it's becoming more expensive to do a lot of things, including operating a business.
There are some firms that actually really should no longer exist. But there are other times that you have firms where the underlying business model still has the potential to create real value.
The Fed doesn't see zombie firms as a problem in the United States, at least not yet.
So we might have come into this year thinking zombie firms are a small problem and one that'll quickly go away as things normalize. But if this is the new normal, the problem of zombie firms, zombie banks, and even slower growth for the whole economy will only become a bigger challenge.
Is the U.S. financial system propping up zombie firms? And how many are left after the pandemic?
Yes, and lots is the answer.
Zombie firms are failing businesses that managed to stay open for years due to cheap credit.
There is no single accepted definition of zombie firms, but there are common characteristics that we look for. Usually, if it's an older firm, it's not a new firm.
So this is an overly indebted firm. And on top of that, is consistently displaying negative sales growth.
Roughly 10%.
No, it's not just old firms, like tech companies. There's so many startup tech companies that were actually only able to survive because of cheap debt and investor money. It's not just old firms. Old firms and newer. There's tons of zombies.
Listed companies in the United States are zombies.
Tesla is not an example, actually. Just to be fair. I know I shit on Elon Musk a lot. Tesla is a company that has very low debt and a nice cash position. They're a fine company. The problem with Tesla is that it should be valued like a car company, which would not make it one of the fucking 10 largest companies on earth. It's a car company that sells fewer cars than Toyota, bro. It's just a fucking car company, bro. And they value it like next year they're going to have all the things they've been promising and they're all going to make money. The fucking walking robots are all going to make money. And the fucking self-driving robo-taxi service that everyone can sign up for is going to make money. And Tesla financing is finally going to make money. And none of that shit makes money. And the only thing they make money on is fucking selling cars right now. At a fucking 8% margin after the price cuts, which is the same as fucking, actually less than Toyota.
According to the Fed's most recent estimate, which was collected before the pandemic began.
Which is almost twice as large relative to the share 20 years ago. So there is really a trend here.
Other counts estimate higher levels of unprofitable firms weighing on the economy. One of the more aggressive counts come from Credit Risk Monitor, which says that as many as 40% of publicly listed U.S. companies are actually unviable.
Yikes.
Zombie firms can appear in any sector where debt
I hope
is involved.
that's not true.
Like real estate,
that would be
energy.
catastrophic.
These are sectors that traditionally are less exposed to competition and also tend to be more financially vulnerable and more prone to swings in demand.
A big chunk of the universe of unprofitable companies in the US are actually growth companies. They're also oftentimes companies that are under-leveraged. They don't have a lot of debt on balance sheets, and that's a really key difference with a typical zombie. It's really important to sort of separate them.
When compared to their peers, zombie firms are smaller in size, have lower returns on assets, hold less cash, and have lower investment opportunities than their non-zombie counterparts. Those weak financials set zombies up for failure if they can't find a new creditor to bridge the gap. That's
You guys want to pitch in?
2020.
If we all put our money together, we can help bail out a single zombie firm. Could be fun. Give them a few more years of wasting everybody's time. Phase? Yeah, Phase. Phase is a great example, bro. Phase is a perfect example.
23. 516 corporations have filed for bankruptcy through September. That's a huge surge from recent levels.
Companies that used to borrow at zero to invest or grow their business are now paying in some cases upwards of 9 and 10%. So if your cost of doing business goes way up and your sales are growing way less than they used to, that's a huge problem that's making a lot of businesses simply not profitable.
By the way, this is a good thing. Like, in the short term, it does cause some pain, but it is a good thing that fucking businesses that make no sense and waste money go out of business. Problem is, we've allowed so many of them to build up for so long that it's going to be so fucking painful because we've had zero interest rates for so long. So you could just keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. And we kept printing money and printing money. So
businesses like the trucking giant Yellow. It filed for bankruptcy in August. Some 30,000 workers were laid off in the process.
I love how many ads Snoop Dogg is doing after getting fucked by FaZe. I can promise you getting fucked by FaZe did not factor into that. Snoop Dogg just loves doing ads, bro. Snoop Dogg's wealthy. He has plenty of money and he just loves doing ads. He quit FaZe insta. He did not lose a bunch of money on FaZe, bro. They gave him stock and then it was worthless, so he quit.
This company had really been in trouble for over a decade. And what they did in order to make a go of it was continue to borrow money, use private equity at times to find new ways of funding themselves and hope for new growth options. But none of those really panned out.
Yellow stayed afloat in its final years with a $700 million bailout loan from the government. Yellow repaid $54.8 million in interest on that loan, but just $230.
Yeah, the thing about Snoop Dogg and Shaq, and there's a few other celebrities that they've done so many ads that people like it. I don't know how to describe it. Like nobody calls them a sellout for doing a lot of ads. So if you get to that situation where it's like fine, where everyone's kind of chill with it, you should do as many as you possibly can because it's fucking free money. It's incredible. If it doesn't hurt your brand image to do that many ads, then fucking print them because Snoop Dogg makes racks from all of them. It's amazing. It's low work. Is Twitch a zombie company? Twitch is owned entirely by Amazon, which is not a zombie company. So there's no worries.
Of the loan principal was repaid before the business shuttered. The company did not respond to CNBC's request for a comment.
It was very important during the pandemic that governments stepped up. One of the unintended effects could be that the support was initially mostly untargeted. So if it's not well calibrated, it might have kept pre-pandemic zombie firms alive for longer.
And the era of cheap money went away and they have to pay market rates to borrow. Suddenly they don't have as much traffic as they used to. Their business model doesn't work. And worse, they're left with the legacy of all the debt they took on during the zero rate era. And that's what a lot of other companies share. It's really raising the bar for what companies have to achieve. At the same time, we're realizing companies take a lot longer to achieve profitability than a lot of people had hoped. There are people like Sheila Bair, the former head of the FDIC, who think that these bankruptcies are what we need to get back to a healthy economy.
I'm hoping we can pull off the proverbial soft landing and make this transition not too painful. But once we do get to the other side, it's going to be better for the economy.
There are some
I agree with that.
That actually really
I don't
should
agree
no
it's going to
longer
be
exist.
soft.
There can be a tendency of those weak banks to continue to extend new loans because that helps those firms stay afloat and allows those weak banks to avoid having to recognize the losses on the loans that they've already made.
Yeah, just kick it out.
Economists studied the lost decade of the 1990s in Japan to learn the full effects of zombie firms.
Japan was an early example of this concern that zombie firms could cause a lost decade of economic growth. And it's not out of the question that we could face a similar problem today.
So the issue in Japan was at the time the combination of undercapitalized banks and weak supervision. So they had an incentive to keep the zombie firms alive under the expectation that the government would bail them out.
The effect? The share of zombie firms in Japan shot up after 1994, and a decade of slow growth followed.
Love that.
Well, what's happening with the U.S. banks now? They have big losses on their portfolios while they're hoping that they can continue to make a nice spread on interest rates. It's not so much a question of earnings season right now and whether the banks can get through it. It's really a question of how much capital do the banks really have to lend into the economy over the next decade? And if they don't have as much as we previously thought, there's a risk that for the broader economy we experience a lost decade here too.
Economists say key U.S. industries like airlines and autos appear to operate on high debt and potentially an expectation of government bailouts.
What's happening now is that even if the economy weakens substantially, the government is constrained. It can't borrow.
It is funny because like right now you'll see that if bad news comes out about the economy, like a bad jobs report, there's this report called the ISM about industrial manufacturing, if that's down, you'll see stocks actually rise on the expectation that the government is going to break and have to start bailing things out. Like bad news becomes good news because people are like, oh yeah, surely we're at the point where fucking they have to start doing bailouts, which is like a bad sign.
And come to the rescue the way that it once did. It's almost a luxury to be able to debate the idea of whether the government would step in and lead to a Japanese-style lost decade.
That it's not a secret, and about all I can say is we know that we're on an unsustainable path fiscally. It's not that the level of the debt is unsustainable. It's not. It's that the path we're on is unsustainable, and we'll have to get off that path sooner rather than later.
Even in the face of growing debt nationwide, some investors see this economy as unusually resilient.
I don't think the parallel with Japan holds at all. The supply side of the economy continues to sort of grow a little bit. You're bringing more supply to the labor market. You're taking down pressure on wages. The other difference is that we went through a massive shock in 2008. A lot of things have been put in place to reduce the risk of financial instability.
I think one of the challenges that the Fed and other bank regulators are having to pay attention to.
Not a big truster of Goldman Sachs.
Have the assumptions that we've traditionally used when assessing the healthiness of banks.
You know, it's an unrelated Goldman Sachs story. Goldman Sachs is one of the biggest investment banks in the world, and they do a lot of big mergers and acquisitions, and they're very sleazy and well-connected. The CEO of Goldman Sachs is a part-time DJ. And he loved DJing so much and he kept doing it, but everyone started making fun of him for it, that it started to truly affect his work. Like because as Goldman Sachs has gone through some rough times recently, they lost some big fees or big clients, or their revenue was down. They also did that card, I think. They backed the Apple card and lost money on that. Everyone's been like really harping on the DJ stuff, so he finally had to quit. He had to quit his love of DJing because he had to be like, no, I'm done DJing. I haven't DJed in a long time. I'm actually not a DJ. What happened with the Apple card? My understanding is that it is good for Apple, but not the bank that's backing it, which I think was done through Goldman Sachs. Like, it's not profitable. They're not charging enough fees on people.
Do those still hold? This is where supervision comes in, filling the inevitable gaps in the rule system.
The Fed's interest rate hikes are expected to rid the economy of weak performers.
We've raised our policy interest rate by 5.25 percentage points and have continued to reduce our security.
Why not just quit his banking job? Surely he makes enough, bro. You could say that about like every fucking rich person in all of society. Why don't they just quit and have fun? I don't know what to tell you, dude. It's just not how it works. They just don't do it. They want to make more.
These holdings at a brisk pace. We've covered a lot of ground, and the full effects of our tightening have yet to be felt.
The biggest implication of the rapid rise in interest rates that we've seen is that reintroduced the value proposition of cash as an asset class, and that actually, puts some constraints on risk assets.
I think we're only just beginning
cash,
to see
no longer
the toll
trash
that high rates are taking. If rates stay where they are, it's going to reshape business, banks, and the U.S. economy as we know it.
In a good way. Dude,
I
pray they can hold it higher for longer. I know they won't. They're going to fucking cave. They're going to fucking cave and chop that shit down to zero and bring in fucking yield curve control, and they're going to fucking start printing money again. But if they can hold it, man, we could actually have a real fucking economy where savers are rewarded and people can fucking not lose the value of their dollar constantly. And there's innovative companies and there's fucking... Oh, it'd be so nice if they could hold it. They're just not going to do it.
made a bad loan with information you had at the time. Maybe the firm was like potentially promising, but it never paid off. And I don't want to recognize that I, the investor or the bank, I was wrong. And that's human behavior.
Interesting video. I liked it. Carlos Waters and his team at the CNBC business section or whatever, they've been making a pretty good couple of short documentaries. They're nice.